Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Grounded Masculine podcast with me, your host, Finn McKenna Fox. So today I'm super excited to have my guest Ryan Yokome on for such a fucking powerful conversation. Ryan is a business coach, he is a father, he is an endurance athlete and nature lover, and he's such a good dude. We've had such a beautiful friendship over social media over the last number of years, and our conversations go deep and they go deep fast. And this one is like no other. We spoke into so much of that role of fatherhood and the impacts and the effects that it has on how we are in business and entrepreneurs, with both of us being entrepreneurs and coaches. It's been super interesting to see the impact of becoming a father and how it has changed how we show up in that role, and how it is that we have moved through a lot of our own stuff in around business and in around parenthood and in around ourselves. Like as I said, there's like towards the end, like there's both of us had massive fucking breakthroughs in our own beliefs around parenthood and some of the blocks and challenges that we've even been facing as well. So this episode has been absolutely kick-ass, and like I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback from it. So as always, sit back, tune in, and if you've got any feedback, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out with myself or Ryan. I'll drop his details in the show notes, and absolutely enjoy. Thanking you. Awesome. So good to have Ryan here on the Grounded Masculine podcast. It's been such a good time, this nurturing this relationship that we've had through the beauty of social media over the years. And I was on your podcast last year, wasn't it? And yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah, man.
welcome along,
I
dude.
feel like we have a ton to talk about, a lot
Mm,
to talk about. Yeah, and thank you for coming on my podcast as well and for having me here today, brother.
yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, I was just saying to Ryan off air, like it was listening to his an episode that he recorded in his podcast. That's one of my like really nice go-tos for myself, but done a podcast on like your parenthood journey and how that has changed how you look at things in business and stuff. And I was just like, oh, this is such an important topic. So that's one of the things that I want to get into. And I'm sure there'll be many other areas that we can riff on as well. But let's get into
Yeah,
it, dude.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I love starting off conversation with everyone is asking them, what does being grounded mean to you?
I was actually just studying this, the difference between earthing and grounding. And I always thought that earthing was grounding, but I'll come back to what grounded means to me, I think, as a man. But yeah, I realize earthing is putting your feet on the earth, and grounding is I have one of those grounding mats that you plug it into the outlet and it goes to the grounding port. And I realize that you're just sucking up all the dirty electricity and using your body as a ground. So technically, that's grounding. So I much prefer earthing, but uh, yeah, being grounded to me is yeah, it's essentially just being rooted in presence and consciousness and not being super chaotic. I think that's the way I really enjoy living.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's it. Like it's because life is just busy and crazy and chaotic, and so many people just get caught up in that rat race with it because they're not grounded. Like they don't know, or it's not a priority for them to come back to themselves and get rooted.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have my practices. What helps keep me grounded, like I said, was getting out and putting my feet on the earth. I know you love nature. We both love being outdoors. And then also prayer, like anything for me that's stable helps me
Mm,
ground. So for example, if I were to put my stability and like the amount of money I have, my bank account, that's always changing. So it's not
yeah.
stable. But I know I can go out and put my feet on the grass and it's always going to give me the opportunity to feel more grounded. It's never going to be like, hey, we don't work today. Sorry. But and same with prayer and connection to God, like all these things just help me be more stable and grounded. And honestly, the more I feel grounded as a man, the more my wife feels safe, the better husband I am, the better father I am to our daughter Noah, because she can get really chaotic and crazy as any kid can. So the more grounded I am, I just find I'm better in life. I'm better as a business coach, life coach. I'm just better all around. And I think when I'm ungrounded, God, dude, it's chaotic. I actually don't like it. I don't like the feeling of being ungrounded.
Yeah. 100%, and that's it. Like it's like when you get so used to knowing that feeling of being grounded in yourself, like when you're not it,
Yeah.
it's really unsettling. But again, it's like it's one of them things. It's like your partner, your kids, everyone around you feels super unstable because for so often it's like us as the man or so inner masculine is it's such an important
Yeah.
thing is that holding of everyone else because we can weave that energy and that capacity to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it too is I did a bit of my background, maybe for your listeners, is I've been a life and business coach for 10 years, but I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19. Like I dropped out of high school and I went right into construction business when I was 19 and then transitioned to network marketing business, had some success there, then transitioned to life and business coaching. And over the years of doing like many calls with clients, like, dude, all around the world, like international, everywhere, because I've always had a virtual business, some in person events as well. But being grounded with that work is, in my opinion, the most important part of that work.
Mm,
It's just if I jump on a call with a client and I'm chaotic, I'm all over the place, I'm ungrounded, I don't feel like myself, it's just like it's not a great way to serve the clients. So that to me has been a phenomenal training ground for me to be more grounded and rooted in who I am. And then also, you know, this I'm super vocal about the worldly stuff, conscious parenting, everything, and to be able to express who I am and what I truly believe in and deal with the backlash or the people out there that have, you know, opposing views and
yeah.
not get derailed. That is a practice of grounding in itself. And then cross pollinating that into my relationship, like I said, with my wife and my daughter, and being rooted in that. It's just, you know, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So that's business for me has been a huge, huge practice for staying grounded.
Yeah, like and I think that's one of the things. It's like it's one of the gifts with business is like it's such a beautiful learning experience, but it's also one of the curses as well because it's fucking challenging and it can trigger us so often as well. But so often it's like when we're not ungrounded, when we're not grounded, that's where we find it really hard.
Yes. I mean, that's my biggest lesson right now is I do very like the way I think everyone needs to figure out how they make money. And the way I know how I make money is through consciousness. It's actually when I feel really grounded, I become more magnetic of people just reaching out and wanting to work with me. When
Mm,
I'm more chaotic and fast paced and doing busy, it almost slows down the money flow, which is
yeah,
very interesting. But to be fully transparent, our daughter was born July 2020. So in the heat of everything going on. And then
yeah,
we had a baby on top of it. And it's our first child. So, you know, prior to that, we had a very freedom-based lifestyle. We were traveling every 2 to 3 months and traveling first class and going on all these amazing excursions. And then we couldn't because of all the lockdowns. And then also we just had our newborn baby. So that first 2 years, dude, I had no sleep.
mm,
And I'm sure you can relate to this. I mean,
yeah,
Noah, just her sleeping pattern, she was up every 2 hours. So I was up every 2 hours rocking her, you know, bouncing on, we have a big workout ball we bounce her on. And yeah, because of that feeling of ungroundedness and sort of chaoticness for a couple of years, plus sleep deprivation, our income went from was around 500,000 a year down to 150,000. So
mm,
remove 350,000 ish a year, it's a huge change in lifestyle. And
yeah,
so and that was primarily because we were adapting to being new parents. Like I'd never done this before.
yeah,
So yeah, it was like even to this day, like cultivating, and we've built things back up, not to the point where it's 500,000 again yet, but we will. But it's been like literally Noah's now 4. That first 2 to 3 years was a huge learning curve for us, man. But
yeah.
I would say in the last year we have had way more stability than we had in the first 3 years.
Mm. And that's something I can relate to so much. It's like when I know for ourselves, like when we went through a big transition with like kid, like one of our child was born, there is like we only have a certain capacity to do a certain amount of things. And
Mm.
It's like you're like adjusting in so many ways. You're support. I know I just go into that supporter role so much more for Shona to help and provide for her and stuff. And like it just does take capacity
Yeah.
away from growing the business. So then you always do
Oh
see there is
yeah.
that dip with it, and then it's like, all right, let's get back on. And
Yeah.
like I know for myself, like this last year has been the biggest one where transition from leaving Australia to come back to Ireland, so much uncertainty, so much unstableness when we came back to Ireland, and plus throw another kid into the mix of it as well. Like it was like I feel like literally I'm just starting business again from scratch.
Yeah.
Like in the last
Yeah.
probably 2 months. It's just like, whoa, that last year was absolutely crazy.
Yes.
And
Yeah. I
but
can
like
relate.
it's massive. It's such a big one. It's such a big one that I know I can relate to, and I know it's one of the harder things being self-employed doing that compared to like, oh, I could
Yeah.
just go and like clock in and work and do that. But then it's
Yeah.
like there's such a big clash with like values, such a big clash with lifestyle, with so many different aspects of it. But it's
Yeah.
choosing what feels right for you and your family in the mix of it, I think is so important.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest lesson I think I've learned is my values didn't change. So, I still value freedom and my health. Like that
Mm,
hasn't changed. I still value being connected to God. But my priorities have changed
mm,
100%. Like my habits have changed. I would even say some of my beliefs have changed. Just because, I made the mistake of thinking I could keep doing what I was doing and throw a kid in the mix and everything was going to work the same way.
yeah,
And it doesn't at all. And you've
yeah,
probably heard this before you became a dad. Everyone will tell you it's so different once you have children
yeah.
and once you become a parent. And you really can't explain the experience until you become a parent to someone who doesn't have
Mm,
kids yet. It's just totally different. Like the way I equate it for myself, once Noah was born, I felt like, it's going to kind of sound weird. I felt like a piece of my soul fragmented off and went into another human being. And I was trying to figure out how I feel whole and grounded now. That my soul is just running around and eating ice cream and playing with other kids. And I'm like, how is this happening?
yeah. It's such a big
So
one.
it's
Like it's
it's it's you know what I mean? Yeah, it's taken me like several years to acclimate to where I'm at in life now, which is so
mm,
different than pre-child.
yeah. And I think this is some of the struggles that so many men face, but they're not able to articulate because they mightn't have that level of awareness or understanding or consciousness of where they are in it. They just feel like they're in a really tough period of fucking parenthood is tough. And then they just go into their
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy patterns, like the unconscious patterns of just numbing out, avoidance of
Yeah,
all of that sort
yeah,
of stuff. And like that's the conversations I'm having so often with guys where
yeah,
they get to this
yeah,
point, it's like, I don't know how I even fucking got here. It's like my health's gone to
yep,
crap. It's like my relationship's really tough. I'm just reactive with my kids because I'm just in this cloud of just unknowing.
yes,
But I
yeah,
feel like that's why it's so important to be able to, as guys, to have this conversation and know and understand is like all of us go through this in some shape or form for ourselves. So it's figuring it out sooner rather than later. It's like, how can I actually change and adapt to my circumstances?
hmm,
Because we
yeah,
we can't be who we were before kids.
no, no, yeah. Change and adapt to the circumstance is huge. One of the things that I needed to work through, and I still do to this day, is anger.
Mm,
I would have so much anger because being a parent, conflict would arise between me and Noah because I was usually trying to do something with business, or I was trying to get something else done and I couldn't get the thing done because Noah needed my attention.
yeah,
And then I get angry from that I couldn't do something with my purpose or my business. And then when I could, I was exhausted, just completely drained. And then I just felt like the energy was gone from it. So I would get angry and I'd work through that. So, I love endurance sports, running, biking. I got a punching bag. That thing is gold to hit. Like that thing is stress relief. So anger came up a lot and just working through that and making sure I'm not taking my anger out on my daughter,
mm,
because of my own frustrations and really that's just my own childhood wounds.
yeah,
And that's what parents do, right? If they're not working through their stuff, they don't look at their stuff and then they just take it out on their kids. Um, So to work through the anger on my own and use it in a positive way has been
Yeah.
huge for me.
Yeah.
And then also like Chris and I, my wife, we almost split 3 times, dude.
Mm.
Like we've been together for 23 years and we were done multiple times. Like sex was out the window, connection was out the window. Like we're like, what are we even doing here? And so we went through our own evolution in our relationship together as we were becoming parents. And honestly, like Chris and I now, it's like it has helped us grow to another level as a married
Yeah.
couple.
Yeah.
But it brought us to the brink of being separated, like potentially 3 times.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, man. It's so huge. And again, it's like I know it's like there's been periods for myself and Shona where it just you just feel like you've drifted so far apart in the chaos
Yeah,
of everything that's happening. But again,
yeah,
I think it's one of
yeah,
them things like it takes a lot to be able to come back and be able to move through them in a healthy way. And as you said, it's like when you do, like you just become so much more solid in this next version of yourself, and this next
yeah.
version of the relationship is huge. But again, it's such a common thing that is unspoken about for so many men.
Yeah, the relationship part is massive because it does take a toll. But I do little things now that I find help. Like yesterday, we go to this meat market called Hopcot, and they butcher their own meat. They're awesome, and they had a bunch of flowers for sale outside. So I was there. Chris was in the car, so I grabbed some flowers. It was like $20, purchased them, and then came back and I gave him. She didn't see me come back to the car with them, and then when we got home, I gave them to her. She was so ecstatic. I'm like, if I can do little things like that, it makes our relationship better. And
Mm,
her love language is gifts.
yeah.
So if I could say anything to guys, it's like know your wife's love language. It's very important. Go read the 5 love languages book. It will help you fill her love tank.
Yeah, massively. I'd love to go back to like what you were talking about, like with the anger being such a big one for yourself and like how you were able to start moving through that in a healthy way. Like I'd love to know, it's like what was the point where you first recognized that for yourself and what was the turning point of how you approached that in a different way?
I've always had issues with anger, even before my daughter was born, like always. And it was unhealthy for a lot of years,
Mm,
where I didn't really know how to work with it. And
yeah.
I also didn't know because anger is a secondary emotion, it's like a Kickstarter emotion. And I also didn't know that there's emotions underneath the anger, like guilt and shame and wounding and
Uh,
abandonment issues and whatnot. So I worked with a life coach for how long did we work for? 4 years straight. And she helped me a lot work
mm,
through a lot of the emotions that were suppressed and a lot of the deeper work
yeah.
and recognizing that the anger is really just covering some sort of hurt up that's underneath that.
Yeah.
Um, that was the biggest turning point for me to work through it was to work underneath the anger. But then I still get angry. Like stuff like that doesn't go away.
Uh,
The difference now is I am conscious of it instead of just reacting to the anger in the moment.
mm,
Like I used to get road rage, I used to finger people. There was one guy who, like, if I would be biking, I remember as a teenager, I was 17 and I was on my mountain bike and I was biking and someone did something stupid, cut me off and fingered me. I literally rode as hard as I could to chase this car down, followed him home and knocked on his door because I was so pissed with this person. Like there is I would get in fights when I was in elementary school and I had so much anger. And
Mm,
so um, when Noah was born, I was already aware of this, but the sort of the practice for me was to recognize in the moment, this was the key thing. If something triggered me and I got angry, as a father, is to breathe. So I practice breathing and then coming back into the moment. And I can actually feel same thing when my dog used to bark. You know, when your dog barks and you're like, shut up. Like it just triggers you. Uh, I'd catch myself because I can feel what's the best choice in this moment or decision. And I can feel the best one is to just breathe and ground and be chill.
mm,
And then let me respond to it. And I can feel myself when I slip and I react with anger.
yeah. Yeah.
And then after I feel guilty. I'm
Yeah.
like, why did I do that? Right. And so for me, that it's just there wasn't really like a pivotal moment after Noah was born. It's just been a constant practice for me.
Yeah.
And then the outlet, like I was saying, for me with the anger, is exercising. But if I exercise, I can catch it before it like builds up to the point where I even feel anger. It's just a lot of energy that I output that I need to move it into something.
Mm. Like I totally relate to that so much, man. Like, and that's one of the reasons for myself. Like, I made a promise to myself to back last year, like after like we were back in Ireland for about a month or two, and I could see how just chaotic and unstable. There was a lot of things were, and how much like both Shona and our oldest Bonnie were like really struggling with adjusting to Ireland and all of that. And like I knew it was like, right, this is going to be an interesting next 3, 6 months or whatever, especially coming up to like second trimester or third, all of that stuff. So I know it's like again, I can recognize my triggers so much. I know my patterns so much from working on myself so much. So I was like, if I'm not exercising and moving, I'm no fucking good for anybody. So because
Me
that is
too.
such a good way for me just to ground myself, to get into my body, to release all of the anger, the frustrations, just allow myself just that time and space to move through what's going on for myself. So that was why I decided is like I'm committed to doing some form of exercise every single day. And it's been a
Hmm.
non-negotiable. And like it's literally that has what has held me through so fucking much in the last year is just been next level because I needed to make that commitment to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I do this. I work out 7 days a week. It's
Yeah,
like I can't not work out. I need that outlet.
yeah.
Sometimes I will give myself the space to not work out for like a day or a day and a half, just because I feel like I need to integrate or just be in the anger without releasing it.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's really healthy for me to just feel it and move through it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think anger is something a lot of men struggle with. They're like they
yeah,
don't know how to work with it.
yeah.
Like a lot of guys, they just you probably never admit it.
Yeah. And like I know for myself for so long, like early in my journey, I was like, I'm not an angry person. I was like, I'm the furthest thing from angry person. It was like, but it wasn't until like I actually like looked deeper at it and like worked with it more. I was like, outwardly, I'm not an angry person because I'm a good little boy. But inwardly, it's like I was had so much internal anger and I would direct all of the anger internally. So it's like when you have
Yeah.
anger, when people are angry, it's like there's going to be like that external anger where like you're flipping people off, you're like punching people out, all of that stuff. It's either
Yeah.
going to come out as if it doesn't come out in that way, it's going to come out in passive aggressiveness, where you're just passive aggressive and just putting it out through that way. Or the other one that I see is you internally direct all of the anger, and I'm like the
Hmm.
worst for myself, and that was me for so long. I was like, having that realization is like. I actually am hold a lot of anger, but I never allowed myself to let it out.
To let it out. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I would do the same thing, man. I'd hold on to it and then it would explode and come out. But I didn't do it to people. Like, you know how you hear guys that are
Yeah.
like physically, like, I mean, if I got in fights when I was younger to other guys, but you know, you hear guys that are like verbally or physically abusive to their wives or their kids, none of that stuff. I would never do that. But I would hold on to it and then, yeah, I'd have to punch a pillow or punch a tree or, you know, something crazy and it need to come out in some ways eventually because I would
Yeah.
hold on to that stuff.
Yeah.
But, man, when I learned to work with anger, it's potent. Like you can really cultivate some powerful energy. And me personally, I do my best in just life and business when I'm not angry. Like there's a rule of thumb with marketing and business is you never write an email newsletter when you're angry.
Yeah.
Like never do that. And usually you probably don't want to do a social media post either because it's just not the best energy to create in.
Mm.
But sometimes it does help me get the energy moving. And then when I feel I'm more grounded, my heart's more open, I'm more connected, that's when I'll do the business stuff. That's when I'll do the workouts. Like when I'm training for a half Ironman or a marathon or something, and I feel good, I perform way better feeling good than I do off anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anger when you're you know this when you're running for 4 hours off anger, that's not going to last. it's
No. No.
going to run out at some
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
and then what?
100%. Yeah, it does not feel good in your body.
No, it doesn't. It's a low frequency.
Yeah.
But but it is a frequency, not it's a primitive frequency too. So it needs to move through. But it doesn't serve me to be a great father or a great husband in that
Mm.
sense, or even a great business owner.
Yeah.
But it is something that I think every person, not just men, but women, need to really own. Like I worked with a guy once that he was on prescription medication to suppress his anger.
Mm.
And I'm like, dude, we need to move this, because he was aware that it was just suppressing it. And I'm like, dude, you are gonna blow up at some
Yeah.
point. So, it's not good to suppress it. It's got to come out. And we all know pharmaceutical drugs, they just suppress the emotion. They just
Yeah.
numb it out, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's like, and it goes with like any of the emotions that we're talking about. Like anger is a big one, but like it goes with any of them. Like for I think as a father, it has been the biggest deep dive into learning how to regulate my emotions and understand my emotions and communicate my emotions more than anything that's ever happened
Hmm.
because like I fucking needed to. And it was like I remember it so clearly. Like it was literally when Bonnie was probably about 3 and Bree would have been Josh, he would have been not even like 1 at that stage.
Hmm.
And like it was that whole idea. It was like Bonnie was going through lots of big stuff because of the transitions and everything that was going on for her. Bree is just such a big energy, beautiful, big fucking energy little being. And it was like I could feel myself being really unstable and getting triggered really easy and being reactive. But then we were trying to like lead them and teach them and help them to be able to understand their emotions and stuff like that as well. So it was like, oh, let's get these charts for Bonnie. Let's go through all of this stuff for them. But by doing all of this stuff with them, it was just like, it was the first time it was simplified in that way for me, whereas I'd been working on it
Hmm.
myself, but I never actually clicked until actually is like, it's recognizing and accepting it and expressing it, communicating
Yeah.
it and allowing it in that way. It was just like, it's like this is such a game changer. And then by me doing that more, by me communicating that more with them, then that was how they learned within the moment of it as well. Like, and it was just such a
Yes.
beautiful gift for both of us to be able to go through that all together. It was, yeah, such an
Yeah. Yeah.
investment.
That's awesome. Yeah. Being able to communicate what you're thinking or feeling in the moment is huge.
Mm,
Because I don't think most families do that. I don't think most couples do that.
no.
They hold on to it and then they blow up later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's
like, and
there's a
like,
ton. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Go
it's
ahead,
like
sorry.
when with that, it's because it's how we do it now. It's like then like when like a 4-year-old comes up and serves you because you're like
Yeah.
suppressing stuff. You're like shit.
Yes. Yeah, they
It's
know.
like
They're
they come
aware
up.
of
It's
it.
like, do you need to go outside and get some fresh air? And it's like, yes, I do. Thank you.
Getting schooled by your 4-year-old.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like,
they're totally aware.
and
Yeah.
like, and I think that's it. Like, it's like for kids, it's like they learn by seeing, not by being told.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. They're modeling everything that you do, not what you say. Yeah.
Mm,
And Noah's a good example. She's a very awake. We chose not to get her vaccinated I mean, I would hope people know this by now for very clear reasons. Like her speech, we hear this all the time from other parents. Her communication and speech is phenomenal.
mm,
Plus just her confidence and just her knowing who she is, like, and not getting swayed by other kids. She's very strong in who she is. So we chose that road. And I believe that we feed her great nutrition, and the way we parent her, as far as like her frequency and vibe,
yeah.
I think it matches how her soul works. So yeah, she's super in tune. So same thing. She'll say to me, like, do you need to take a breather? Like, do you need to like get some space? Like, you're not even 4 yet. So,
Yeah.
she's a very awake little soul.
Mm,
So to be able to like speak her language too is really important for us. Because I don't know
yeah.
about you, but when I was growing up, my parents are great, but I didn't feel like I was spiritually supported. I didn't feel like they understood my gifts and how I communicate and the way I did things. So me being a parent now, I learned from that, and I'm like, okay, how can I meet the needs of my child, both her basic needs as a human, but also her spiritual needs, so she feels
Mm,
supported on a soul level as well. And yeah, I mean, I can telepathically. This sounds weird. I can telepathically communicate with her. We've always talked, but I can telepathically communicate with animals and all sorts of people if they're open to it.
yeah.
And Noah's no different. I mean, we can. it's almost like we don't need to verbally communicate sometimes. We just get in this flow and we know what each other are saying.
Mm, I love that, man. Like, and it's so true, and like it's one of the big things I know for myself is like when I look back at my life, when I look back at my childhood and stuff, is like it's that whole idea of like what people perceive trauma to be. Like it doesn't have to be something bad or something big that happens. Like it's
Mm.
like I love when Gabriel Maté speaks into a trauma, it's about you to receive too much or too little of something and it's how you perceive it for yourself. So like I grew up in a house full of love, but it was love in a very different way, a one-dimensional way, whereas I'm a very like sensitive, in touch with my feelings, all of that. But that
Yeah,
was the
me too.
furthest thing that I
Yeah.
grew up from.
Yeah. Me too.
And like for me, that's my biggest core
Yeah.
wound with myself is like never feeling good enough because I never received love in the way I needed to receive it.
Uh,
I was receiving love
yeah.
in other ways, but I never
Uh,
received it in the way I needed to receive it. So that was where that
yeah.
big block was for myself with it. But
Yeah.
being able to
Yeah.
be in tune with knowing and understanding that, but then being able to communicate and support our kids how they are and meet them where they are. It's been such a big
Yeah.
one, and it's such a challenging one because each of our kids are such big personalities in their own way. So it's like, oh, what worked for this one doesn't work for this one. So then what,
That's
how
interesting.
do we need to learn how to adapt how we communicate and how we parent in different situations is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an
See,
interesting one.
I only have the one so far, so we're trying for a second. But yeah, that would be interesting to have all these different personality types, ways they communicate. Yeah. Well, you have four. You're probably close to mastering it by now.
I know about that.
But you make a good point. So with what you the way you received love and then not feeling good enough. So mine was I felt everything was my fault.
Mm,
And my mom would joke and she would say, because I have two older sisters, so I'm the youngest. And my eldest sister, she's 7 years older than me. And our middle sister, she's 4 years older than me. So there's not a huge age gap, but my parents were not planning to have another child. And
yeah,
so she kind of called me the mistake where, we weren't planning to have another kid and you were kind of an accident. So when I was young, you talk about taking trauma. I internalized it as, well, it's my fault. And I watched
mm,
my parents struggle financially when I was really young. So I'm like, oh, my parents are struggling financially and they're fighting. It's my fault because I was born.
yeah,
And what I noticed when I got older is something would happen with my wife and I'd go, it's my fault. Even to this day with Noah, when things happen and it didn't, there's some issue, I internalize it and go, oh, this is my fault.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
what did I do to make this happen? And then you realize it's actually not your fault in most cases. It's just the belief from the trauma you created when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I created when I was a kid. It's very liberating to break free of those things because I just feel
Mm.
I can be a better parent and a better business owner, a better husband when I'm free of those traumas. We were talking about before we started recording how much, if we don't do that work, it really affects our relationships.
Oh, 100%. And like, I know, like, some of the guys who listen to this podcast are probably like getting, it's like, fuck, I never knew it was this deep. Because, like,
Yeah, it's
if you're
deep.
newer to this work and newer to the understanding of this, like, it can be pretty daunting. But it's one of the things, it's like, it doesn't matter where you are or where you're starting from, but
Yeah.
just by starting is powerful enough.
The
And just
the
knowing that you're on a path.
the thing that helps me tremendously is journaling.
Mm,
Just because my energy is like fairly go faster. So when I sit down with my journal, which is just behind me here in my office, and I grab that pen and I open the journal and I start writing the date, it slows me down and it slows down my thought processes and my emotions so I can actually feel them.
mm,
And then as I journal, it gives me so much clarity. And I finish the journaling session. Maybe it's a page. Sometimes I just write down 5 things I'm grateful for. It grounds me.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's an hour, and then I walk out of this room, I'm like, oh, I feel good. And then, if my kid's screaming, my wife's pissed off at something, it doesn't phase me.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm good. I can
yeah,
help you guys.
yeah.
Right. But if I'm so full, I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now?
And I think that's the thing as well. It's like having our own practices that work for us in the season that we're in to bring ourselves back to ourselves and not bring ourselves back into that grounded energy because
Yeah.
like work could be really busy, stuff is going to be chaotic, there's different things going on, and then you go in and you throw the family into the mix of it. Like it can be really easy to get caught up in that, and especially like if your partner and if your kids are bigger energy, they're dealing with stuff, and then you come in and meet them where they are. It's going to be a
Oh
chaotic
yeah.
evening. Whereas if you just
Yeah.
can come in yourself and just be like, boom, I'm just going to be this anchor, I'm going to be a rock here, and just going to
Yeah.
bring the energy back down. Like it's such a
Okay.
it's such a
I'll
important
get
skill to learn.
I'll share a great story to this. So I was on a coaching call, and there's, I want to say, like a lot of people, like several dozen, maybe I can't remember, it was 30, 40, or 50 people on a Zoom line, and I was coaching this group. And I finished the call. I felt amazing. And I felt like I'm on purpose. I'm serving. I feel driven. I feel grounded. I feel clear. So I left my office, which was upstairs in our old house, and I went downstairs to go see my wife. And I was super excited. So I walked downstairs. She's in the kitchen. She was standing by the dishwasher, and I walk in. I'm like, honey, how's it going? Just finished this call. I feel great. Like, it was so strong. Then she looked at me and said, yeah, that's great. Can you unload the dishwasher? I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, can I get like, wow, you're amazing, or great job, or something, right? Like, and nothing. It was like, can you unload the dishwasher? And I realized what that taught me in that moment is I wasn't grounded and present. I was grounded and present, needing validation from my wife.
Mm.
And if I didn't get the validation, that now I'm reacting to that. And so it's so what I do now is, before, because my office in this house is upstairs. So before I go downstairs after anything, because us guys, we have boxes, we compartmentalize everything. So once I'm finished my work, I compartmentalize that box. And before I go over to being like dad, father role, I actually pause on the top of the stairs, and I structure my energy. So I breathe and I get present. And before I just roll down the stairs, I ask myself, what's the purpose of me going downstairs to be with my wife and my kid?
Mm.
And I connect into the intention and the purpose of it, because now when I walk downstairs, and sometimes it's just like, okay, we got to go get groceries. Okay, I want to ask Chris how her day was. But now I'm coming downstairs structured and grounded and present. So no matter what they say, no matter what they're doing, it's not going to affect me emotionally. I can be in a great space to just be of service and be a great dad.
Man, that's so powerful. Like, and just that question, like, and I think it's one of the things. It's like, as you're saying, with journaling, just learning to ask yourself them big questions. If it is putting pen to paper, or if it is just in that intentional moment, is so huge. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It's just,
when you're sharing that, I was like, I've been there so many times before. Like,
oh,
it's just you're like so buzzing, and then you just walk into the chaos, and you're like, okay.
yeah.
Like nearly said to myself, I was like, had a really good call, thanks.
I
But
know,
yeah,
patting myself on the back,
yeah.
right?
But like it's one of them
Yeah.
ones. It's like that's one of the things that like speak to a lot of the fathers that I work with as well, is like the importance of transitions. Because
Yes.
again, we're so
It's
so
huge.
busy just to kind of just we go from one task to the other, whereas just have that transition, just bringing that moment of just slow things down, and check in with yourself, do a couple of breaths, just whatever that
Yeah.
might be for yourself is just like a so important.
Yeah, it's gold. That's a lifesaver for me in the I love how you talk about the transitions. Something I never did before, and I would just roll from thing to thing, and then I get caught up in my emotions based on the
Mm.
environment. But
Yeah,
now I feel so much more stable, and but it's also cross pollinates into everything, like, you know, the weather and plans changing, and looking at your bank account, and all these things that can change, and just being stable and grounded regardless of the external
yeah,
is a phenomenal practice for men. It
yeah,
truly is.
yeah,
And then the next step is, I always say, you put awareness on awareness and you have consciousness. It's practicing depth of consciousness and presence in each moment. And everyone can feel that. Everyone can feel when, a man is present or he's not. He's on his phone, he's distracted. And yeah, my life is better. My life is better 90% of my day without my phone, to be honest with you.
yeah, yeah. Man, I
Yeah,
think
I
yeah,
still need it for things in business and life, but I did a phone detox where I took a week. It was 5 days with no phone, like just totally shut it down. Didn't even touch it. I powered it down. I put it in my closet. Dude, the amount of times I wanted to reach for my phone was insane. And not having it there, I really saw my addiction to it and how much I will reach for it just for a dopamine hit to
Yeah.
like feel good.
Yeah.
And when that's not available, when that wasn't available to me, I was able to sit and actually process what I'm feeling and my thoughts. And by the end of the 5 days, my wife said to me, "Your eyes look clearer."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah." And if you know anything about the eyes, that's where you can see people's traumas. And when they work through their stuff, their eyes do get clearer,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. So, yeah, I highly recommend people do a phone detox. It's so worth it.
And that's it. Like it's like with that whole thing, it's like so often like we have these different crutches that we lean on to just numb out, or when we're just overstimulated, when there's too much going on, it's just you're looking for a dopamine hit, you're looking for something to switch off. And again,
Yeah.
it's like I know it's like so many guys really struggle with that. And like I know it's something that I have to be really consciously aware of. It's like with my phone usage is a massive one, with reels,
Yeah.
with all of that stuff. You just get caught into that scroll hole so easy when you're just looking for that little. Is like, oh shit is really bad. It was like, oh, it's really tough, or I need a moment to myself. And then you just reach for them so much so easy.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even for myself, like I used to, that was one of my things, is like with alcohol for me as well. It's like I would always have like a couple of glasses of wine at the like 2 or 3 nights a week, and that was like, oh, just that's just like my little reset, a bit of
Mhm.
downtime and stuff. And I was like, actually, it's like I don't like that, because that's me using something else as a switch off for myself. So it was like it was even only just the start of this year where it was like, I'm actually just gonna go off it for a while and just see what effect that has on me overall. And like it's nearly 6 months since I've had a drink, and
Wow.
like I never had a massive issue over the last while. Like I used to have a lot more issues when I was younger with alcohol.
Hmm.
Like that's a whole other story, like with it.
Yeah.
But it's like I still used it in a way of like, rather than dealing with what's going on, rather than dealing with my emotions. So I was like, I just like, oh, it's easier just to switch off and
Yeah.
put on a movie
Yeah.
and have a glass or two of wine. Rather than
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
it's like, let's just sit in the shit for a while and see what comes up. And it's like,
Yes.
this is uncomfortable. Fuck.
Yeah. I stopped drinking years ago. I don't drink at all anymore. It's not that I had to stop drinking, but I just like I wasn't. I would rarely drink anyways. To be honest with you, I started feeling like crap after I would drink. So if
Mm,
I had a beer or if I had a glass of wine, I felt like the next day it took me a whole day to recalibrate my energy back to a level that I wanted it to be at to
yeah,
perform in life. So I just decided, hey, let's just cut it out and see how I feel. I don't miss it one bit. I
yeah,
don't crave it, nothing.
yeah,
Don't miss it. My crutch, though, is I do drink coffee, which I could cut out. But I mean, listen, coffee is just as much of a drug as alcohol is. It's probably the most common one
yeah,
used worldwide. But yeah, I will have a dark roast coffee every day, which is, I guess, would be the one addiction,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And that's it. Like, and I think for it's like by just becoming more aware of what are these things that we go to, like if it is alcohol, if it is like your phone, if it is porn, if it is drugs, if it is like fucking whatever it might be, or what are the things that you reach for when there's stuff going on for yourself that you're not willing to look at, so you just want to avoid it. So what are they? Just bring
Yeah.
your awareness to them, and rather than actually reaching for that thing, it's like let's
Yeah.
actually sit with it and actually see what's actually going on.
Yeah. Well, if you look energetically, because you know I teach a lot of masculine and feminine. So beer is feminine. Even wine is feminine. Marijuana is feminine. I mean, porn, you're looking at women, so that's going to be feminine. And typically, what you'll find, and what I found in working with guys, is they're out of balance, not necessarily with their feminine, but they're not being supported and nurtured from the feminine. And so
Mm,
they'll go to things that like help them balance out that side of themselves. Like they can drink a beer and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I feel relaxed. They come back into the body. Basically, what it is it's anything that brings you out of your head and back into your body. So beer does that, marijuana does that, porn does that. And that's what guys struggle with because we're typically overthinking in our head about stupid shit all day that doesn't even matter. And then we're like, I'm stressed out. I need a release. And then we do something that brings us back into our body. And that's why I think sex for guys in particular is so validating with women, with our partner, because we feel whole. Like
Yeah.
you're getting the whole feminine and feeling like you can finally, it's like post ejaculation or a good night's sleep. You can finally not have to think about stuff, right? For
Yeah.
at least a little bit. A good night's rest is so therapeutic for guys in particular, as it is for women. But I think for men, it's very relaxing.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and that's
A
like
lot of going to
such
sleep.
such an interest. Like I've never thought of it in that way with like with the feminine and like where like if you don't have that nurturing side, like how you so often we do reach for so much of that. Like it's such an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Like, and you can see it so much because
Well,
it is.
it's kind of like if you like, we don't have a babysitter, but imagine, if your wife's nagging at you, your kids are chaotic, it's all crazy, and you have like, an 18-year-old babysitter over, it's like, well, who are you going to gravitate towards, the naggy wife or this 18-year-old hot babysitter? Like, who are you going to want to spend more time with? It's sort of like we naturally gravitate as men towards the feminine that nurtures us and fills us up. But it's dualistic because in order for our wives to feel that way, radiant, we need to be more present and conscious and grounded. And then it polarizes them into their feminine radiance.
Yeah.
So it's like chicken or the egg, who leads?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the person that's most open and conscious needs to lead.
Yeah.
So whoever that is, the husband or wife,
And I feel like my take on that as
in the
well is
moment.
like it's like
Yeah.
with that as well, it's like as the man, because especially like when kids are in the mix of it and stuff like that, because the naturally the female has got to have so much more connection with the kids and they're like what they think about with kids and for their kids and stuff like that. Like our brain can't even comprehend. Is like it's like whenever Shona lets me see a glimpse of how her brain operates with how she has to organize everything with the kids and stuff. And it was just like, yeah, not a bit of wonder. Like, there's a lot going on there. So that's why I was like, I'm going to focus on like being able to be really healthy and masculine to allow you to be able to then
Mm-hmm.
drop in. Whereas if it's the fellas and it's like, oh, she needs to do this, so then that brings me in.
Yeah,
They've got a
no,
lot of stuff going on. Whereas like, let's
yeah,
take
they'll,
responsibility for ourselves
yeah,
and be the person who can take that responsibility in the relationship
yes,
to then be that anchor for them.
yeah. And even better, catch it before they're where they need it.
Hmm.
So, as example, sometimes I'll draw a bath for my wife, Chris, and she doesn't ask me to. I can just sense that she needs a relaxing bath with essential oils and probably 45 minutes of alone time. So I'll draw it for her. And you know what's the first thing she said to me when I started doing this, man? She thought when I first drew the bath for her and told her, come upstairs, and she saw it, she thought, why is he doing this for me? I can do this myself. Like I can do this for myself. So it took her a little bit to break down her masculine structures where she could actually receive me leading her in that way in that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's not good if as guys we're gonna kick back and be like, well, they need to. She needs to be more radiant. She needs to be more hot. She needs to have sex with me more. Like it's not gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the women's brains, the way like when I talk to Chris too, they do so much, man.
Yeah.
Chris does way more than I do for our daughter,
Yeah.
and it's their brains are on all the time, making
Yeah.
sure everyone's taken care of.
Yeah. And so much of it is like it puts them into like a masculine side of
Yep.
it because there's so much of it is like the plan and the organizing to try to get everything lined up and stuff, which is super masculine orientated. So again, as you
Yes.
said, like doing the things to just invite them into the feminine more is such a big one. And like I know
Yes.
even
Yeah.
for myself, a big realization with myself and like on my fatherhood journey was looking at like for me, the difference between like father and dad nearly. It's like when I look at it as like the father is the masculine, whereas like I'm being a provider, I'm organizing, looking after the house, doing all of that stuff. Whereas when I'm dad mode is like that's where I'm like the cuddly dropping into my
Oh, I like
feminine.
that.
That's where I'm like really a
Yes.
lot more in my feminine, a lot more connected and deeper with them. Whereas like father, I'm getting shit done. Dad mode is like, right, let's play time, let's have a play, let's be more present, let's drop into that side of it more. And like when I recognized that, like the difference between the masculine and
Hmm.
feminine in that role, I was just like, oh, that's
That's very
super
cool. I've
interesting
never
to
thought of that. That is
because that
super interesting.
because if you look at a lot of fellas, is like the struggle to connect. Is like I was even just listening to a podcast there today when I was training, and he was like, so he was saying about like fatherhood and stuff, and he was like, oh, for guys, like when the kids are young, like it's really hard to connect
Mm,
with their kids, and I was like, and this is a very masculine leader, but he's a very alpha
yeah,
masculine, and I was like, oh, I wonder is it
yeah,
really hard for him to connect because it is more of the feminine and nurturing side
yeah,
that
yeah,
is needed for that deeper
yeah.
connection and that creating that bond.
Well, I
Whereas if
know Cam Haines. Do you know who Cam Haines is?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so Cam Haines, friends with David Goggins and stuff, and Joe Rogan. He has kids, and he has two sons, and he said the same thing. He said, "Well, you don't really raise your kids until like dads don't raise their kids until they're about 4 or 5 years old, because up until then it's the mom." And I'm like, "Well, that wasn't the way that I nurtured Noah." And it's interesting what you said about father and dad,
yeah,
and this other podcast you're listening to, because I can relate to the father dad scenario. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So like, and I think it's looking at that. It's like to connect with your kids more. It's like it is like you need to drop into more of that feminine because that's where you're letting that softness in, that nurturing, that caring, that's like being able to. It's like right, maybe sometimes you need to put some of the plans at bay to just be spontaneous with them and stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, never had an issue nurturing Noah since I was a father. The only thing, and I don't know if it's been the same with you, I have not been able to figure this out. You know how a lot of people say once a man becomes a father, that he everything turns to providing for the family, and he's like everything is that direction. I honestly have never had that same sort of feeling. It's
Mm,
really weird. Like, I don't know if you did, like, you instantly kicked in. I have the feeling of protecting my family, but like that sort of like go, go, go mentality. And I don't know why I don't.
yeah.
It's very bizarre.
I can I think that comes back to what we've been speaking into as well. It's like because there's so much of myself that I see in you and vice versa. Like it's like we are like as kids we were more sensitive and as we're on this journey it's like we not gravitate more. We can balance and dance between our masculine and feminine a lot more. So it's like I want to be really nurturing and really connected and really present in fatherhood. Whereas like the provider side of it, that's the one that doesn't come as natural to me in it because that's taking me away from this, but I know I need to do that. And like so it is,
Yeah.
I can really see that. Whereas
It
other guys that maybe feel it more foreign to drop into that feminine, there's like, oh, I'm gonna go to what's most comfortable. So like providers get most comfortable because
provider, that makes
that's my role.
sense.
That's why it's
Yeah.
easier to drop into that side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's been, like I said, Noah's almost 4. It's been 4 years of learning to cultivate that side for me,
Mm,
of like full on providing at the level that I know I'm capable of, and I know that my wife desires for our lifestyle.
yeah,
But dude, it's been a learning curve. Like
yeah,
it's a very different paradigm now being a dad than before when it was just Chris and I. And
yeah.
for a while, I was like, what's the matter with me? Like, why don't I naturally just want to go like make $1 million for our family and just go do it? I'm like, what the fuck's the matter with me? Like everyone talks about, once a man becomes a father, he instantly wants to provide everything. And so I've worked with that. It's something I've struggled with for 4 years. Is
Mm.
what is going on there?
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. Like, and yeah, like it's just like, yeah, like just looking at it, and that's definitely one I'm going to be pondering on over the next while. But is it, yeah, like the natural thing, the first thing comes into my mind was, is it more so because it's like you gravitate to what you feel most super comfortable with, and like if you're feeling more comfortable with that, and like if that is something that you felt that you needed and wanted and desired when you were a kid that you didn't get,
More
is
than
that what
likely.
you're going to do? Whereas
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like my father
It's
provided
just,
for
it's,
us, but it didn't he
yeah.
wasn't providing the love and
Same.
affection that I wanted. So that's what I'm
Same.
doing.
Yeah. This is just one big unconscious hodgepodge episode of stuff coming up here.
I know, it's just like there's gonna be so much listening back to this. It's like, oh fuck.
You're spot on though, Finn, because that's exactly what my father is like. Japanese, super disciplined, provided for us, still makes great money. But yeah, I was craving that like emotional connection and spiritual support.
Mm,
Interesting.
yeah.
So yeah, got some
Well,
work to do.
and I can know for myself, like the big thing is like, right, I've nailed this side of it. It's like, right, let's actually get let's get both sides working together now.
100%.
And like
Yeah.
that's the big one. It's like, right, this side is down. It's like I have such strong bonds with my kids. It's like how can I
Yeah.
hold them bonds while doing the other, while having this absolutely pumping thriving business
Yeah.
while not losing
Yeah.
myself in the mix of it. And like
Yeah.
that's the one. Whereas it's
Yeah.
literally
There's
like you're
a
like spinning the plates. It's like which one needs most attention
which one?
now?
Yeah. And to be honest, this really excites me because it has been a challenge for me to figure it out. So before Noah was born, I figured out how I make money and do well before being a father. I knew what to do. I figured out the method. And I'm talking more of like, I believe each person, they have a unique way in how they create wealth and make money.
Mm,
And I figured it out. I knew what to do, not so much do, but I knew who I needed to be to create money that way. And I'm still figuring it out right now as a father now. It's like this whole new world. And what you just said is huge for me. So I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah. So it's like adding in the counterpart. And that's where I really need to do the work because I have figured out the dad side, but I
yeah,
need to get better at the father side.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to get better at the father side. Yeah. So it's cultivating that.
yeah.
And it could be maybe talking about it now. Maybe I need to look at some stuff with my dad and the dynamics I viewed that as growing up.
Yeah.
Because you know what they say, right? Like your subconscious will never let you become something that's painful or you don't like.
Mm,
So not that I don't like, it's not that I dislike my dad. I had a great relationship with him, but if there was trauma and pain there linked to providing, being a
yeah.
father,
And that's it. Like,
could be
is it
showing
like
up.
in the subconscious? Is it as like to be a uber successful provider for my family? It means I'm not going to be a present, connected, emotional father because that's what your body, that's what your cells has experienced. So it's like if I do that, can I still do this? Because you've never experienced that before. So like you're the
Yeah.
one that's
And
like
then how do you,
breaking, like it's breaking a generational shit. It's breaking them
yeah.
cycles. Like that's what our job is. That's what our role is, breaking so much of that generational stuff that's passed down. And I was like, right, how can I do this and this together?
And this, like you said, spinning both plates
Yeah.
and doing it in a way where you're grounded and true to yourself too.
Mm.
I think we got some cool stuff to focus on, Finn. Personally,
Yeah, it was like,
yeah.
thanks for the constant session, dude, man.
Yeah, well, myself included. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I for 4 years, man, I've been trying to figure this one out. And like I said, I felt a lot of shame around why am I not like doing making money at the level I know I'm capable of making, and
Mm.
I've got the time, I've got the potential, I've got everything. I'm like, what's missing? But I think you just nailed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So I need
huge,
to
man.
getting to look at my relationship with the father role. I
Yeah.
might even thinking about this now. What I might do is just look at other men who I do find are great providers and great fathers for their families, and just see
Mm.
their qualities.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll journal on that
I
and
love it,
make some
man.
tweaks.
I love it. I love it. Oh, dude, such a beautiful conversation. Like, and I know, like, when we talked in your, like these conversations could just go for hours, and like we've only scratched the surface of it. But I'm super mindful of your time as well. So yeah, absolutely
Yeah, dude,
grateful
this was
for the
awesome.
conversation. Like, I think it's such a beautiful conversation, and looking forward to hearing the feedback from the guys listening in as well, because there's definitely a lot to ponder from the episode.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure, fan. Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your day with your family to be here with me and have me on your podcast.
Yeah,
And
likewise, man.
yeah, it's always a good flow with you. Always a great conversation, and I appreciate the enlightenment around some of the beliefs and things that I can work on myself. And I hope
Yeah.
this helps the men out there or anyone who is listening to it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's given me a lot to think about as well for myself, my own journey as well. So appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna go get present before I walk into a room with two other women.
I love it, man. Awesome. All right, have a good
Awesome,
one.
Finn.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks, bro.